welcome to our deep dive on Chuck Woolery.
Absolutely.
You've sent over a fascinating collection of articles, interviews,
Yeah.
even some personal notes, it seems.
Yeah.
Really runs the gamut.
Yeah.
Seems like you're interested in exploring the full spectrum of his life.
Yeah, absolutely.
From his game show days to his later political commentary
Right.
and everything in between.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, that's for sure.
Definitely a lot of contradictions to unpack, but
Yeah.
first, let's acknowledge the news that brought this all to light.
Sure.
Chuck Woolery passed away on November 23rd at the age of 83.
His friend and podcast co-host Mark Young confirmed it, stating that Chuck was at home in Texas with his wife, Kristen.
You've included a lot about Wheel of Fortune
Right.
and Love Connection.
Of course.
Clearly the two shows he's most known for.
Sure.
But I was struck by how some of these articles frame his departure from Wheel.
Uh-huh.
Some say it was a simple salary dispute that led him to quit in 1981, opening the door for Pat Sajak.
Right.
But then there's Woolery's own account from 2007,
Okay.
where he claimed he actually wanted a raise to $500,000.
Uh-huh.
And that NBC was ready to cover the difference after Merv Griffin only offered $400,000.
Interesting.
Makes you wonder if there was more to the story than just money.
Yeah.
You think maybe a power struggle was at play?
Could be, yeah.
After all, Griffin threatened to move Wheel to CBS.
Wow.
And this was only a few years into its run.
Yeah.
Shows how much clout these creators had back then.
It really does.
If the network was willing to step in and pay the difference,
Right.
that suggests they saw Woolery as a key asset.
Yeah.
Maybe even more valuable than Griffin anticipated.
Interesting perspective.
Adds a whole new dimension to what seemed like a straightforward
Oh,
contract negotiation.
yeah.
Now let's move on to Love Connection.
Okay.
11 years hosting.
Wow.
It's got to be some kind of record, right?
It's definitely impressive.
When you think about the show's format, it was so simple,
Simple.
yet so captivating.
Yeah.
3 potential dates,
Right.
the contestant picks one, then spills all the details 2 weeks later.
Right. And you know what I think is really interesting is that...
And let's not forget that studio audience voting
Oh, yeah.
on who they thought was the best match.
Totally.
It was like interactive gossip,
Yeah.
giving viewers a chance to participate in the drama.
Totally.
No wonder it resonated with so many people.
Right.
One article even quotes Woolery, saying it was the only show he actually watched at home because he loved the unpredictability.
Really? That's interesting.
I think that speaks volumes about his personality.
Yeah.
Even off camera, he was drawn to that element of surprise.
Yeah.
The unscripted moments of human connection.
Right.
Makes you wonder how much of his on-screen persona was genuine charm
Yeah. Yeah.
versus a calculated performance.
Good question.
And it leads us nicely into the next chapter of his life,
Okay.
which takes a pretty sharp turn.
All right.
You provided a lot of material about his move into podcasting
Yes.
and right-wing politics.
Yeah. Quite a shift.
In 2014, he starts co-hosting Blunt Force Truth,
Right.
a very politically charged podcast.
Very much so.
He becomes a vocal Trump supporter,
He did. Yep.
even spreading some pretty inflammatory claims about COVID-19.
Some bold statements for sure.
One article mentions him specifically accusing the CDC, media, and doctors of lying about the virus to undermine Trump's re-election campaign.
Oh.
Some pretty bold statements.
Yeah.
Coming from someone we mostly associate with lighthearted game shows.
Yeah.
It definitely challenges our perception of him.
It does.
But then there's this fascinating twist.
Okay.
A few days after making those claims,
Yeah.
his own son tests positive for COVID.
Oh, wow.
And Woolery makes a complete 180,
Really?
publicly acknowledging the virus was real.
Wow.
Talk about a reality check.
That's wild.
Makes you wonder if that personal experience shook his convictions
Yeah.
and forced him to confront the real-world consequences of his words.
Makes sense.
Or maybe it exposed a pattern of doubling down on his beliefs until faced with undeniable evidence to the contrary.
It's possible.
And you've included a quote from Blunt Force Truth in 2023,
Yeah.
where Woolery says,
Okay.
if you're not all in on government and all in on what this leftist, far-left Democratic Party is up to, then you're just not welcome.
Wow. Okay.
That's quite a statement.
Is.
Seems he went from keeping his conservative views under wraps in Hollywood
Yeah.
to demanding strict adherence to a very specific ideology.
It seems so.
It really makes you think about the impact of echo chambers
Yeah.
and how they can amplify certain beliefs.
Uh-huh.
But before we get too deep into his political journey,
Okay.
I'd love to touch on something else you sent over.
Sure.
His music career.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like he had a band in the 60s.
He did.
They were called the Avant-Garde.
That's right.
And they even had a top 40 hit in 1968 called Naturally Stoned.
Wow, I didn't know that.
One article mentions that the song later became the theme song
Oh, wow.
for Woolery's short-lived reality show on Game Show Network in 2003.
Really? A reality show?
Hold on.
Chuck Woolery.
A reality show.
That's interesting.
Woolery. Now, that's something I wouldn't have pictured.
Yeah, me neither.
Seems like we're only scratching the surface of this guy's diverse career.
It really is fascinating how many different paths he explored.
The reality show, from what I gather, only lasted 6 episodes.
Okay.
And wasn't very well received.
Got it.
But it adds another intriguing piece to the puzzle.
It does.
Especially considering the title.
Okay.
Chuck Woolery. Naturally Stoned.
Right.
A play on his band's hit song. You have to wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah.
A way to inject humor into the situation.
Right.
He always did seem to have a playful side.
Yeah.
Even when tackling serious topics.
True.
So we have the game show king,
Right.
the country singer,
Uh-huh.
the outspoken political commentator, and a reality show participant.
Wow.
It's almost like we're talking about 4 different people.
It does raise the question of how we reconcile these seemingly disparate parts of his life.
Was there a core Chuck Woolery that ran through it all? Or was he constantly reinventing himself to fit the circumstances?
It's definitely a question worth pondering. Definitely a question worth pondering. And speaking of reinvention, there's one more aspect of his career we haven't touched on yet.
Right.
His brief foray into acting.
Oh, right. I did see some mentions of that in the sources.
Mm-hmm.
Something about a kids show, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. In the 1970s, he played Mr. Dingle on a syndicated children's show called Newsy Review. He was an elderly postman and shopkeeper.
Wow.
Can you picture that Chuck Woolery delivering mail and selling penny candy to puppets?
It's a pretty stark contrast to the suave game show host persona we're so accustomed to.
It is.
Although I suppose some of those Love Connection contestants might have felt like they were dealing with a puppet master at times. Given his knack for pulling strings and getting them to open up.
That's a good point.
Seems humor was never far from his reach.
Yeah.
Even in his political commentary.
True.
But back to his acting stint.
Okay.
It's interesting to see this versatility early on in his career.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't content to be typecast, even if it meant taking on roles that didn't necessarily fit his established image.
Right.
He even did some film acting, didn't he?
You're right. In 1974, he appeared in a movie called The Treasure of Jamaica Reef.
Okay.
Alongside Cheryl Ladd and Rosie Greer.
Wow.
Quite the eclectic cast.
Makes you wonder if he ever considered pursuing acting more seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have been a contender for those rugged leading man roles that guys like Burt Reynolds were known for.
Interesting thought.
Though given what we know about his conservative views,
Yeah.
it's possible that those might have clashed with the prevailing culture of Hollywood at the time.
That's true. The entertainment industry has always had its own political leanings. And it's not always easy to navigate those waters if your views don't align.
Another layer of complexity in this multifaceted life we're examining.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point to circle back to.
Okay.
The inherent contradictions that make Chuck Woolery such a compelling figure.
Right.
We've seen the charming host, the politically charged commentator, the country singer, the reality show participant.
How do we make sense of these seemingly disparate identities?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And one that I think resonates with how we view many public figures today. We often see them in a very specific light, playing a certain role.
Yeah.
But underneath it all, they're just people with their own flaws, beliefs, and experiences that shape who they are.
You've hit the nail on the head.
And it's important to remember that those beliefs and experiences can evolve over time. As we saw with his stance on COVID-19, highlights the human capacity for change and how personal events can challenge deeply held convictions.
Precisely.
As tempting as it might be to label him based solely on his later political views, we need to acknowledge the full scope of his life and career.
I agree.
He brought joy to millions with his game shows, entertained with his music, and for better or worse, sparked conversations with his political commentary.
I couldn't agree more.
It's about recognizing the nuances, the evolution, the complete picture.
And these sources, as varied as they are, offer us a valuable starting point for that understanding.
They do. And you know what's striking?
What's that?
Even with all these seemingly disparate facets of his career, there's a common thread that runs through it all.
Okay, I'm listening.
Communication.
I see what you mean.
Whether he was hosting a game show, singing as a song or sharing his political views. He was constantly engaging with an audience,
Right.
connecting with people on a certain level.
Exactly.
And that's a skill not everyone possesses.
That's for sure.
He had this ability to make you feel like you were having a conversation with him, even if you were just watching him on TV.
I know what you mean.
He mastered the art of direct address,
Yeah.
creating an illusion of intimacy even through the screen.
That's a brilliant observation.
It makes me think about the article
Okay.
that mentioned the Love Connection audition tapes being much longer than what actually aired.
Really?
Apparently, Woolery would spend hours talking to the contestants, really getting to know them beyond the surface level.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Suggests a genuine curiosity about people, a desire to connect on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's what resonating with viewers.
Maybe so.
They sensed that he was truly interested in their lives, their stories.
Perhaps that's the key to his longevity in the entertainment industry.
Could be.
He wasn't just going through the motions, he was actively engaging with those around him.
Right.
Whether they were contestants, audience members, or podcast listeners.
It's a valuable lesson for all of us, really.
It is.
The importance of genuine connection, even when we might disagree with someone's views.
Yeah.
And the power of truly listening to understand, not just to respond.
Well said.
And on that note, there's one detail I found rather intriguing.
Oh, okay, what's that?
One of the articles mentioned that his father owned a fountain supplies company.
Your father supplied.
Like those little decorative water features. I'm curious, what's the significance of that?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure,
Okay.
but it struck me as oddly poetic.
Okay.
This man who became known for his smooth, flowing delivery, his ability to spout witty remarks and keep conversations bubbling along,
Yeah.
came from a family that literally dealt with fountains.
Now, that is a connection I wouldn't have made on my own.
Yeah.
It speaks to the unexpected influences that shape who we become, even if they seem completely unrelated to our chosen paths.
It's a good reminder to never underestimate the impact of family history,
Right.
even on something as seemingly distant as a career in show business.
Perhaps those early experiences around his father's business instilled in him a sense of showmanship, a knack for presentation.
It's certainly an interesting thought, speaking of family.
Yeah.
We haven't really touched on his personal life.
Right. The sources mentioned he was married 4 times.
Yes, he was.
And had a rather large family.
He had or helped raise 8 children and stepchildren.
Wow.
His first marriage was to Margaret Hayes, which lasted from 1961 to 1971.
It's a reminder that behind the public persona, there's a whole life we don't always see.
Absolutely. And sometimes those lives take unexpected turns,
Right.
just as his career did.
Tell me more about his other marriages.
His second wife was actress Joanne Flugg,
Okay.
best known for her role in MASH.
Right.
They were married from 1972 to 1980 and had a daughter named Melissa together.
So he had a Hollywood wife during his Wheel of Fortune days.
He did.
I wonder if she ever appeared on the show.
I didn't come across any specific mentions of that, but it's certainly possible.
What about his other marriages?
His third marriage was to music executive Terry Nelson Carpenter, the
Right.
granddaughter of Ozzie and Harriet Nelson.
Right.
They were married from 1985 to 2004 and had 2 sons, Michael and Sean.
Okay.
And his final marriage was to Kim Barnes in 2006.
Gotcha.
They were together until his passing.
Wow, that's quite a Hollywood dynasty connection with his third wife.
It is.
It seems his life was full of these intriguing intersections
Yeah,
between entertainment, politics, and personal relationships.
it really was.
Did any of the articles mention any details about his children or family life?
Unfortunately, there wasn't much information about his personal life in the sources you provided.
Okay.
However, one article did mention the tragic passing of his son, Chad,
Oh.
from his first marriage in a motorcycle accident in 1986.
Arrow.
His daughter, Catherine, also passed away, although the details surrounding her death weren't provided.
That's incredibly sad to hear. It's a poignant reminder that even those who seem to have it all can experience profound loss and personal struggles.
They can.
Adds another layer of depth to this complex figure we're exploring.
It does, and it reinforces the importance of approaching his life with empathy and understanding, recognizing that there's always more to the story than what meets the eye.
Before we wrap up,
Okay.
I'd love to circle back to something you mentioned earlier
Sure.
about his evolving political views.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of people struggle to reconcile the seemingly stark contrast between his earlier affable persona
Right.
and his later more divisive political commentary.
It's a valid point, and one that raises important questions about how we view public figures and their right to change and evolve over time.
Do we hold them to a certain standard based on their past actions or pronouncements?
Right.
Or do we allow them the space to grow and change,
Right.
even if it means challenging our preconceived notions about who they are?
Those are thought-provoking questions, and perhaps there's no easy answer.
But it's definitely something worth considering as we navigate a world where people's views and opinions are constantly being debated and dissected.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that Chuck Woolery, like all of us, was a product of his time and his experiences.
Right.
His views were shaped by the world around him, and those views may have shifted as the world changed around him.
It's a good reminder that we're all on a journey of sorts, and that journey can take unexpected twists and turns.
You can.
There's no guarantee that the person we are today will be the same person we are tomorrow.
True.
And that's okay. It's part of what makes us human.
Well said, and perhaps that's one of the key takeaways from this deep dive into Chuck Woolery's life.
Okay.
A reminder that even the most public figures are complex, multifaceted individuals.
Right.
With their own unique stories to tell stories that may challenge our assumptions and force us to confront our own biases.
It's a valuable lesson, and one that I hope our listeners will carry with them as they continue to explore the lives and legacies of those who shape our world. It's definitely been a journey exploring all these different aspects of his life, and it makes me curious about his path to show business. Was a career in entertainment always the plan?
Not exactly. His journey actually began in the music industry. He started out with a folk trio called the Bordermen, and later formed a duo with a partner named Bubba Fowler. Yes, you heard that right, Bubba Fowler. And they called themselves the Two Woolery Catchy, right?
The Two Woolery, it's certainly memorable, but wow. From folk trios to psychedelic pop duos to game show hosts, it's quite a trajectory. Did any of the sources mention what drew him to hosting specifically?
That's a great question. And while the sources don't explicitly state how he landed his first hosting gig, they do highlight his entrepreneurial spirit and constant drive to connect with audiences. It's not hard to see how those qualities might have translated well to the world of game shows.
One article mentions that he was actually working as a salesman for Pillsbury while trying to make it as a musician. Imagine that Chuck Woolery pitching doughboy cookies by day, crooning country ballads by night.
It's a fantastic anecdote and a reminder that success rarely happens overnight. Many people, including those who become household names, have to hustle and grind before catching their big break. And sometimes those seemingly unrelated experiences shape them in unexpected ways.
That's a really good point. I mean, who's to say that his experience selling cookies didn't contribute to his smooth-talking charm on Love Connection? Can you imagine him using those same persuasive techniques to get those contestants to spill the tea about their dates?
I can definitely see that, but jokes aside, it's crucial to acknowledge the hard work and dedication behind his success. It wasn't just about luck or good looks. He had talent drive and a knack for connecting with people.
And that ability to connect, to communicate effectively, is a theme that really seems to run through his entire career. From singing to selling to hosting, he always found a way to engage with his audience.
It's true, and it makes you think about what made his communication style so effective. Was it the humor, the warmth, the directness, or perhaps a combination of all those things? Maybe it was that he never seemed to take himself too seriously, allowing audiences to feel comfortable and connected.
It's also inspiring to see someone achieve success in such different fields. It shows that reinvention is possible, that we can pursue our passions even if they seem unconventional or outside the norm. His life is a testament to the idea that it's never too late to try something new, to embrace change, and to keep evolving.
You've summed it up beautifully, and I think that's a powerful message for anyone listening who might be feeling stuck or unsure of their own path. Chuck Woolery's story is proof that we can carve our own unique trajectories, even if they don't follow a linear or predictable course. We can be multifaceted, embrace contradictions, and find success in unexpected places.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from his early days as a musician to his reign as a game show icon, his foray into acting, his later political activism, and even the personal tragedies he faced. We've gained a multifaceted view of Chuck Woolery, a man who defied easy categorization.
And I think that's the most valuable takeaway from all of this. He was more than just a game show host or a political commentator. He was a complex individual with a unique story to tell a story that reflects the changing cultural landscape of America over the past several decades.
It's been fascinating piecing together all these different aspects of his life and seeing how they connect. And I hope our listener has gained a deeper understanding of who Chuck Woolery was, both a public persona and the private man behind the curtain.
I would echo that sentiment. He was a man of contradictions, a figure who could spark both admiration and controversy, but ultimately he was a product of his time navigating a world in constant flux, much like the rest of us.
And as we say goodbye to the man who brought us countless hours of entertainment, let's remember the lessons his life offers. Embrace change, pursue your passions, and never underestimate the power of genuine connection. And perhaps most importantly, never be afraid to be yourself, even when it means going against the grain. Chuck Woolery certainly wasn't, and his legacy will continue to spark conversations and challenge assumptions for years to come.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. And to our listener, we hope this exploration has prompted you to think critically about the figures who shape our world, to look beyond the surface and appreciate the complexity of their stories. After all, isn't that what makes life so fascinating? The constant interplay of contradictions, the unexpected turns, the ever-evolving narratives that make up a life well lived.
Beautifully said, and on that note, we'll sign off. Thanks for diving deep with us.